Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. Before we begin, I would request everyone to either switch off their cell phones or put them on silent mode. We shall start with the recitation of Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان صدق الله العظيم.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and esteemed colleagues, it is my privilege to welcome you to the launch of the book Sabre Rattling in Space, A South Asian Perspective, a timely and thought provoking work published by the globally renowned Springer Singapore in December 2024. This book marks a significant milestone as it is the first academic account authored by a Pakistani scholar, Dr. Ahmad Khan, in collaboration with Dr. Aligar Sadeh, a former NASA scientist and faculty member at the United States Air Force Academy, to present a South Asian perspective on space security, policy, and governance. The importance of outer space in contemporary era is self-evident as competition among spacefaring nations intensifies. Against this backdrop, the book explores a wide array of themes within both regional and global security contexts. It underscores how the weaponization of global commons, particularly outer space, and the securitization of space are increasingly central to the policy debates. These discussions are framed through the prism of access to space, now a critical determinant of both military and economic security for the nation states. The authors examine, with particular rigor, the strategic dynamics between the United States led West and India, highlighting how exceptional waivers for the niche technologies have facilitated India's development of anti satellite weapons, a development that poses a risk to the sustainability and safety of space operations. The book offers a comparative analysis of the space policies of India and Pakistan's. This analysis brings into focus Pakistan's commitment to the peaceful uses of space for socio-economic development, standing in contrast to India's trajectory towards the weaponization of space. We would begin today's proceeding with the welcome remarks of Dr. Naim Salik. Currently serving as the Executive Director at Strategic Vision Institute, he has taught at Qaid-e-Azam University, National Defense University, and Air University Islamabad. He has been a visiting scholar at the School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins University and a guest scholar at the Brookings Institution, Washington, D.C., besides being a visiting fellow at the Stanford University and the Simpson Center. He has previously served as the Director of Arms Control and Disarmament Affairs at the Strategic Plans Division. He holds a Master's in History from Punjab University, a BSc Honours in War Studies from Balochistan University, an MSc in Strategic Studies from University of Wales, UK, followed by a PhD from University of Western Australia. His area of expertise includes South Asian security, with special reference to Indian and Pakistani policies on nuclear and missile issues, nuclear non-proliferation, armed control and disarmament, nuclear and conventional confidence-building measures, nuclear safety, security, and export controls. He has published 4 books, including 2 edited volumes, several monographs, and contributed over 7 and contributed 7 book chapters. His published work also includes over 40 research articles. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Akash. Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and good morning to everyone. August is a very auspicious month for Pakistanis, obviously because of the Independence Day, which falls on 14th of August. But for SVI, this year, August has been even more auspicious because in these very first weeks of August, we have held 2 book launch ceremonies. And it's a matter of great pride for me because both authors happen to be my students at one time or the other. Uh, it's a great pleasure for me to be here to welcome you all uh, on this occasion of the inauguration of Dr. Ahmad Khan's book, which is definitely a pioneering work in a field which is so vast as the vastness of the space itself. Space, as we all know, is becoming the new arena for international contestation, both from economic as well as security point of view. Uh, Previously, only a few states had monopoly over the space technology, and it started from the Sputnik moment in 1957, and then the competition between the Soviet Union and the Americans started, and later on, in this period of 1960s, the biggest achievement was the human landing on the moon. And then the competition has continued. A space treaty was agreed upon to regulate the activities in space. But if you look at the details of that treaty, does not cover much. It needs a great degree of revision. And then there has been this fear of weaponization of space. Some people say that it is already weaponized because if you have satellites which provide you location of the targets and help guide your weapons onto the targets, so they are part of the weapon system and space is already weaponized from that point of view. Then you have the ballistic missiles which spend part of their trajectory, in fact, major part of the trajectory in the space, and for that duration, the space is weaponized. The Chinese proposed prevention of arms race in outer space a couple of decades ago at the conference on disarmament, but there has been no progress because of the conflicting interests of the major powers in this. And now the private sector has also started playing a very major role in this. We have seen the SpaceX and the Elon Musk entry into space. Uh, India started its nuclear space program a year after Pakistan, but it's an unfortunate fact that where they are and where we are, because we started in 1961 with a lot of promise, but then we let Sparko neglected and short of funds and short of supervision until it was brought back into the fold of the strategic organizations. And it has again made a comeback. So it's a story of resilience also of Pakistan's program, that despite all the difficulties, the sanctions on technology to Pakistan and the resource constraints, despite all that, Pakistan is making strides. And the evidence is the recent launch of the remote sensing satellite which Pakistan has launched. So we are making progress, but I think there's still a lot to be done. And given the resource constraints, uh, it is not up only the government which will be able to catch up with the rest of the world. I think we'll have to open up this area for the private entities also. And because there are a lot of commercial applications of space which are already being applied. So if the incentives are there, and if the opportunities are created and the policies are made in such a way to encourage the entry of the private enterprise into this domain, I think Pakistan can make a lot of progress in this. I'm not going to talk on the specifics of the book because there are going to be three very competent reviewers who will carry out an in detail review of the book itself. Just suffice it to say that writing a book is a major undertaking. It requires a lot of patience, requires a lot of courage, and it also requires some kind of gift of writing. And I think Dr. Ahmad Khan has proven that if you are determined to do something, you can make your name, you can achieve anything. And particularly writing a book in a field in which nobody has written in Pakistan. It has been a neglected field. And now I am sure after the publication of this book, this field will be popularized, and there will be other people also encouraged to take up the pen and write more about this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next, I have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Khalid Banuri to share his thought with us. Mr. Banuri is Senior Advisor Project Phoenix, advising Pakistan Air Force on training rejuvenation at its academies. He was a fighter pilot and flight instructor in the PAF with diverse interest in aviation, nuclear politics, and arms control, training, education, international law, and outreach. Holding substantial experience at senior level management, policy analysis, diplomacy, research, lecturing, and writing, a significant part of such pursuits, including over 2 decades of expertise in arms control and diplomacy, including being the first Director General Arms Control and Disarmament branch at the Strategic Plans Division, and later as its first advisor on arms control and diplomacy. His outreach pursuits include teaching at public sector universities, lecturing and publishing on diverse subjects. Ladies and gentlemen, may I call upon Mr. Khalid Banuri to present his remarks.
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Space, the final frontier, to explore strange new worlds and to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before. Ladies and gentlemen, these are lines from a very famous 1970s TV serial, Star Trek, which actually took on the pursuit of what space is all about and the wonderful world that lay beyond. This is the sense that will be talked about today in various ways. But before that, Strategic Vision Institute, thank you for actually deciding to hold this book launch, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about this wonderful book. Thank you also to the authors for writing this book. Dr. Ahmad Khan and his colleague is not here. But before I go on, I would like to mention a few things. First, that the title of this book took me back to my Air Force Academy days, where one of the sports that I undertook was fencing. And I specialized in a sword called sabre, and hence my familiarity with sabre rattling. The title itself refers to the notion of deterrence, or coercion, if you will, as rattling, making sound noises, refers to brandishing the weapon without necessarily an actual use. So here we are to talk about this book, Sabre Rattling in Space, published by Springer at Singapore last year. And the two authors, Dr. Edgar Sade, who's a highly accomplished American space expert with an impressive career, and currently at the Astrophysics Institute in Boulder, Colorado. But equally accomplished is the other author, Dr. Ahmad Khan, who's on the stage today, with whom I've had the privilege to work with for several years. And I recall very fondly the first time I met Ahmad and looked at him in the kind of passion he would bring to anything that he would do, sometimes to the detriment of those around him who thought that he has so much to learn. And today he has shown to us that we need to learn from this guy. So 235 pages of small font, 8 chapters along with an introduction and conclusion. The book packs a wealth of information on space. To a scholar of space issues, this is a classic one window operation. It is said, ladies and gentlemen, that there is no such thing as the unknown, only things temporarily hidden or things temporarily not understood. This book undertakes some of those things and takes the space politics by the ear and unpacks theory, politics, practice, and lawfare all in one volume. It picks on the space politics between United States and China, throws in the Soviet and the later Russian Federation factor, and comments on the impact for the South Asian space policy and politics. I can think only of one book that endeavored to link such thoughts to South Asia. This was titled South Asia at Crossroads: Conflict or Cooperation in the Age of Nuclear Weapons, Missile Defense, and Space Rivalries. This was co-edited by an MIT professor, Subrata Ghoshroy, and a German professor, Gotthes Neuneck, in 2010. But Sabre Rattling in Space is one of a kind, as it exclusively deals with space issues and has come 15 years after the Crossroads. Very significant difference. Space is important. Peaceful uses are in the interest of mankind. And in the initial remarks, you've heard of the peaceful uses and also of the role of our space agency, National Space Agency, SPARCO, in this area. This book, actually, among other things, and we will come to that later, also breaks the myth of the indigenous aspects of the Indian space program. It talks about militarization, which is a complicated issue. Space program and inter alia, it leads to the impetus for states to weaponize. I'm reminded of this very old classic, a book called War of the World. It was published in 1898 by H.G. Wells, which suggested that aliens will attack the Earth. The threat today is not really from aliens, but from ourselves. And the tool can be the weaponization of space. The book identifies the difference, and it's kind of complicated, and we heard that earlier, the difference between militarization and weaponization. It brings out the issue of security dilemma, that a state does something for its security, the other side feels threatened and does something to negate it, and hence the arms racing comes up. And the authors bring out the issue of security trilemma and connects three dyads of countries, various combinations: United States, China, India, and Pakistan. And it also thinks that the security trilemma is something that actually brought in a kind of a pressure on Pakistan to evolve into the peaceful uses of space technology, to which Pakistan has adhered for a long time. My own view on this will be that being a nuclear weapon state, some space capabilities are something that Pakistan had to have. So that kind of gels in with some of those ideas. Then, very importantly, while talking about the arms racing, Ahmad and his colleague bring out the sense of the anti-satellite test debate. Uh, it talks about the Americans starting this anti-satellite test and but carrying out their last test in 2008. Russian Federation testing in 2021, and also along with that, the issue of the space debris, which came out as a significant area, and then connects it with the Chinese ASAT test of 2007, and argues that the Indian test of 2019 actually evolved because India felt threatened or a part of the security trilemma. On the issue of space debris, I would recommend to this audience that once you have a moment away from serious work and reading, take take another look at a movie called Gravity, which actually brings out some of those ideas. Um, my own sense about the ASAT tests is that the Indian effort for the capability and the testing of ASAT was more for prestige than for security. Um, Dr. Naim Salik, who gave us the opening remarks, in his one of his books, he has very aptly explained something that I would love to requote. Uh, the Indian Foreign Minister and later Prime Minister I.K. Gujral's The Notion of Third Eye, in which he said that when I see with my third eye, meaning the eye of wisdom, I see that there are only two ways to get into the elite club of the world: economic development and nuclear weapons. And in the same breath, he said, and since economic development is very hard to come by, thereby arguing for an acquisition of nuclear weapons club, being in the nuclear weapons club to be the elite part of this world. At least the interest was in the right direction. It didn't work for them is another story. Um, and I would also want you to recall the BJP, which is the ruling party in India for such a long time now, doctrine, which came out as an election manifesto, and which very clearly identified the inadequacy of its strike force capability of its military. And in the recent war, this has been proven beyond doubt that this happened. Um, when Pakistani elections are about Pakistani politics and never about the Indians, unlike what India does. When Pakistani elections of 2018 were about to happen, there was a scholar in Islamabad who thought that, like the other countries, there should be a way to write several policy papers for the next government, whoever that party that might come into the government, for it to use as options for policy. Um, I was honored to be asked to write about security, which I said I would choose to write where I think is relevant. And I'm happy to say on this day that I wrote a piece on the need for space capability enhancement. And I linked it with the synergy that was needed with the foreign policy and the economic footprint. So several of those things are now relevant to those ideas. Now, the book that Sabre Rattling in Space argues that space is a domain which is congested, contested, and competitive. The only other notion that I can think of which is similar is power. Congested, contested, and competitive. Or perhaps love, which is also a way, and states that find this idea of being invincible also are on the same direction of power, and all of these ideas gel. For the book, this has been termed as a labor of love, and that's also. But Ahmad Khan and his colleague did not find that competition because in Pakistan, not many people have actually dared to write about this subject. This book deals with the state behaviors to trace the possibilities and the path to weaponization. In that, it looks at various aspects, the issues of nationalism, the technological prowess, the global institutionalization and systems, and also the state to state relations and their sense. It also argues that among various things, including of space control, the main issue remains of survivability. And hence, the states that are looking at this aspect will continue to do so. Satellites, ladies and gentlemen, satellites have civilian as well as military functions. And this dual nature adds to the complexity. This book ends with a somber reflection of the possibility of state conflict rising as capabilities rise, since there remains low impetus for warfare. And that is a significant area that one has to continue to think about. Some ideas are kind of challenged by the May 2025 war. For example, the balance of the nuclear versus the conventional threshold. How does that work? Or the pronounced use of space capability that we saw in this war, inclusive of the cyber function, and hence the blending or the fuzziness between militarization and weaponization. Let me end at a very well-known and famous quote, and take out of this as you will. Life is like a chessboard. The pieces are the phenomena of the universe. The rules of the games are what we call as the laws of nature. The player on the other side is hidden from us, but we know that he never overlooks a mistake or makes the slightest allowance for ignorance. And hence, this tells us that subjects like this need to be read, understood, and more importantly, applied in the Committee of Nations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is a distinguished scholar of international relations and strategic affairs, Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal. Dr. Jaspal is a meritorious professor and Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences at Quaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad, where he teaches and researches on subjects ranging from nuclear and missile proliferation to national security and foreign policy. He has been delivering lectures at esteemed institutions worldwide, including the NATO School in Germany, NATO Defense College in Italy, and the Center of Excellence for Defense Against Terrorism in Turkey, as well as Pakistan's premier military and diplomatic training academies. He holds a PhD and MPhil in international relations, along with advanced training in peace and conflict studies from institutions in Austria, Norway, and the United States. A prolific writer whose work include India's surgical strike stratagem, brinksmanship, and responses. I now invite Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal for his remarks. Sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and very good morning. Thank you, Salik Saab, for inviting me to speak on a very important topic, and especially this book review. I understand that due to shortage of time, it's too difficult to do the entire book. But at the same time, I did my best to go through the book and identified the merits and demerits of this book. With due apology to my friend, the author of the book, Ahmad Khan, if I make something, it is only for a suggestions for the future. You can definitely going to write the improved version of this book sooner or later. But I think that let me start with this. If you see the book, it's very well written, published by a reputed publisher internationally. And at the time when you see that Pakistani scholar, if he tries to publish internationally with his own ideas, it's too difficult, but Ahmad made it. The book contains 9 chapters with a conclusion, and in that context, it's a well researched book. If you see the book, all his chapters, he admitted that book was written, or these chapters were taken from his PhD dissertation. So that was a important thing. But when you see the PhD dissertation, which was concluded or ended in 2019, and definitely then the thing started, the Ahmad needs to keep in mind that when you try to read or publish your PhD dissertation, you have to update the literature. I've seen that in the entire book, except a few, you can say 2021 or 2023 references, remaining all are the same which were there. But when I look about the books, you can say structural, or what you see the theme which run through the book and which attracts the reader, that is very intelligently maintained. The opening sentence is very catchy, and you find the reflection of this sentence in the entire book. The opening sentence says, "Space is now a congested, contested, and competitive domain." Excellent starting. And if you see inside, he tried to prove it. The second important thing of this book is that he used the theoretical models. And those theoretical models, which are very much applicable, and he tried to explain even in the charts, and you see the tables, and there he identified some good points. And very quick, if you read those, that see the table, quickly you understand. Of course, it needs a good work or a hard understanding of the theories, and 4 theories when he was linking together realist, institutionalist, liberalist, and constructivists. Then again, he tried to test his findings with by applying the 3 level of analysis. Again, a difficult point. But again, he did a good job in that contest. And I recommend that people who are working on these things, because generally practitioners, I think here some good practitioners are here, for them theory or these things or analysis are nothing. No, they are the starting point. They are the guiding. They are the key in the future. So I think when you look about or work on the space weaponization or space militarization, definitely his first 3 chapters are very significant, very understandable. Remaining is discourses that he documented, or his research work is based on a empirical research and proper working. And when I was going through this book, of course, the font is too small, but at the same time, when you start reading, you are learning something new. That also reflects that we, people who are working in Pakistan, how much we are ignorant about this space. This is the new domain, or it's something else. But if you see in today's world, when we look about this, we find that the increasing interest in the space warfare technologies raises alarm about space weaponization, though Salik Saab said that it has been already weaponized. Generally in the literature we see, as he also mentioned it, that this, when you are using the satellites for the communication, for a military reconnaissance, we call it space militarization. And then still weaponization is awaited to date. It is awaited, but we are inching towards it. Now, in this case, when we look about the sort of thing, of course, sooner or later, if the space weaponization could take place, it would definitely destabilize the existing strategic equilibrium, and at the same time compels the academics, the researchers working in the SVI types institutes how to redefine the new security model, how to rethink. Definitely, it will be an interesting time for the researcher. But when we look about these kind of the things, there are another important things that the states are working, not only the missile beds, but they are also working on the kamikaze strategies to make a small micro satellites to damage the other satellites, and that could be another technique. Now, in this context, his book also, you can say, draw our attention toward the X-37B satellite, which can be used. And since 2010, Americans have been working on it, and that makes sense. But at the same time, when I go through Pakistan, of course, the other people will be referring to the Pakistan. But in this context, he adequately mentioned in his book what India is doing, where India is now, how India is trying to make efficient its BMD, and at the same time, maybe because that's why I was pointing out in the beginning that the book literature or the book research is based a little bit a few years back. But if you see from 2020 onward, India and the US, these alliances which started growing, especially after BICA or this two ministerial level dialogue and transfer of the technologies. It's important. Yes, this book also contains a good source when we trace the India-US space cooperation, and it marked that in 2004 when they had a space cooperation, and that how it was converted into what we call it in a missile cooperation indirect. But at the same time, we have to see in the recent 5 years, this cooperation has gone ahead. And that is the way we have to keep in mind when they start looking about the integration or fabrication and integration of the emerging technologies and where the Indians and the Americans are cooperating with it. My understanding of this book is that it is one of the best books published by the Pakistani scholar with a more clarity. You would not find in the book a biasism. Maybe the co-author was also there to check his biasism. So that's why I think when we start reading the book, we start looking the book, you can find that, okay, a Pakistani scholar is writing, but with an objectivity, not driven by his, what we call it, emotional leaning. So, and of course, it's a new field and something which we have to take into account when we are writing or we are working on these kind of the books. But let me come now some very critical aspects as a reviewer of the book. I think, and this job will be very much, it's just a hypothetical, I'm just throwing spinal. Trilemma. Who coined this term? Why they coined this term? Is it correct? Is it limiting the China, which in your book, quoted from the 2014 Henry Kissinger book, China and US are two pillars of the world. You wrote in your book, quotation, if they are the two pillars, how you reduce one pillar in one region, in a sub-region? This trilemma was a very common term. I have gone through since I was, of course, as a student, and it was very much common among the Americans. Stimson Center graduates and all the others, they are always using Southern Asia. It was that Southern Asia term was coined by the Regional Center for Strategic Study, Colombo, funded by the US, and trilemma has been further. No, there's no more trilemma. Either you have to go try with a great power competition or a multipolarity or a bipolarity at the strategic chessboard, and then you see where the South Asia. Even though the creators of this term, propagators of this term, they are not talking about India, Pakistan hyphenated. You have to look in a dyad. It's not a trilemma. We have to come out of, this is a problem in the literature. We read the English literature, we borrow the English citation, and we continue and sailed with that. And there is, of course, investment by them, because when we go for a fellowship, for others conferences, we have to go and align with them. But we have to be very much open. At least at this level, some people have to take into account that when we are using these terminologies, whose ideas we are propagating. That is the point, that if you have to talk, trilemma is not fit. Maybe fit when this book was conceived, written, submitted for publication. But in 2025, we can use it, but we have to revisit this. There's a diet. Even the propagators of that, they are saying hyphenated or de-hyphenated. There's no de-hyphenation. And practically, if you see that this 20 years, let's say I can put it, or 30 years from 1992 Malabar naval exercise, when the India and US started building their strategic partnership, and then gradually it matured and lived at the high point in the first decade of the 21st century, and then it peaked But even in that process, where Indians and the Americans have a difference, the difference is India failed to develop integrated theatrical command system to pose a real challenge to the China. Their entire focus remain on Pakistani side. So it's better we cannot say or borrow these terms when we are looking. Reality demands this. This is my personal opinion, not a critique. Or second point in this is I fail to understand that why we are not maturing, why we are not understanding, why we are not guiding our student. According to the international standard, according to the, I think if I'm not wrong, Pakistan's Higher Education Commission, if you are publishing your PhD dissertation, you have to take the name of your supervisor. Why you chosen a person who has nothing? Maybe if you did a fellowship there and he assisted you as a co-author, where is the Pakistani? Who was your supervisor in Pakistan? That work belongs to that. If technically, if some academic write on this book that it was a PhD dissertation and here the PhD supervisor name is missing, there will be a problem. You have to take into account. And this point is not only for him, for many youngsters who are here, who are completing their PhD. Yes, if you write your book based on your PhD research, you get first letter from your supervisor that whether he will mind or not. And if he relieves you that please don't use my name, you can go as single author, it's okay. But if you include another author and claiming that this is a PhD dissertation based book, all chapters I have gone through from the PhD dissertation, how you ignore your Pakistani, you can say supervisor. I think this is one of the biggest shortcomings, and that reflects how we are, Pakistani researchers or Pakistani scholars are not ready to admit the guidance, you can say publications or the writings of their own scholars. This is a mindset, not his. It's our all's mindset. One of my old late Professor Kwalchima used to say, "Chitti chamari phenomena." Be careful about it. So any further researchers, when they are writing, please don't commit this mistake. Anytime it can land you in a difficult academic discourse or these kind of the things. My final point is, in this context, of course, it is one of the excellent work did by Ahmad. It also reflects that Ahmad had a good understanding, which we call it scientific understanding, which is normally a social scientist who are working on in these fields. They don't have this kind of understanding. Maybe his previous or his academic background equipped him for understanding a lot about this scientific kind of a thing. This is first point. And that's why I like this book, that it gives you not only a social scientist perspective, it is gelled or it has some kind of a scientific understanding. So that is a very understanding. Second point, when we are looking about the paradigm, you use the word paradigm. And not once, twice or thrice I came across, if I am not wrong, Sputnik changed the paradigm, shift the paradigm. It's correct. But saying Sputnik started space weaponization, it's debatable. Because Sputnik changed the entire strategic paradigm, because first time Americans lost two continental fence. It was reduced 30 minutes striking, and it was able to hit heartland of the US in 1957, which resulted in the winning of JF Kennedy's election when he said, "We are lagging behind." And that was his, you can say, election campaign slogan in the missile race. Yes, it changed the paradigm. But at that time, you may think, I do agree that maybe hypothetically assume that when you have offensive weapons, you have a defensive weapons, swords always encourage the shields build up. And when you have a intercontinental ballistic missile, sooner or later there was a chance of the missile defense systems. In that context, maybe. But at that time, it was even maybe reasoning could be from his side that the Intercontinental ballistic missile was basically Sputnik space launch vehicle, and from there you build your argument. So it makes, but it's a different argument. So we have to also keep in mind where he came up finally on the treaties. He excellently debated Paris, a very much documented literature you find it. Who's what are the reservations of the Americans, Chinese, Russians, Pakistanis, or contribution in that domain? I think that is a very good contribution within the arms control or domain. And finally, in this context, when we are looking, we have to also take into account, on the one side, all these states, they are struggling to have a space capabilities, including Pakistan. Maybe I don't need this satellite like missile bed, but I need a satellite for guidance. Even in the, I think, this recent military schemes between Pakistan and India, which we call it in May, we have seen how much this kind of technologies are contributing in winning the war. With this, once again, congratulations, Ahmad. Excellent work. Very good source for me as well as my students and my colleagues for a reference. It's a real reference book. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We will now play a special video message from Ambassador Muhammad Kamran Akhtar, Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations and other international organizations in Vienna, and concurrently accredited to the Slovak Republic. Ambassador Akhtar joined the Foreign Service of Pakistan in 1995 and over the course of his distinguished career has held key positions in arms control, disarmament, nuclear safety, and international security, both at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Islamabad and Pakistan's diplomatic missions abroad. His previous postings include serving as Director General at the OIC Secretariat in Jeddah and as alternate permanent representative to the United Nations in Vienna. With a master's degree in nuclear physics and a postgraduate diploma in international relations from France, Ambassador Akhtar has represented Pakistan at numerous high-level international forums and expert groups. Although professional engagements have prevented him from joining us live, we are pleased to share his recorded message with the audience.
Distinguished Director General SVI, Dr. Naim Salik, Dr. Ahmad Khan, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure for me to join this book launch ceremony. The book, Sabre Rattling in Space, A South Asian Perspective, authored by Dr. Ahmad Khan, is a timely and vital contribution to the emerging literature on the intersection of space, security, and strategic stability in South Asia. I was privileged to write the foreword for this book. I commend the authors for addressing such a complex and often underexplored dimension of our regional and global security architecture. Outer space is no longer the exclusive preserve of a few. It is becoming a crowded, contested, and commercialized domain. From climate monitoring, disaster management to financial networks and military strategy, space-based technologies are deeply enmeshed with modern life and statecraft. Yet, as this book shows, South Asia's entry into space age brings with it both opportunities and challenges. Pakistan's space ambitions are grounded in peaceful development and regional stability. Our focus remains on using space for socio-economic development and welfare of our people through initiatives like PRSS-1 and ParkSat-IR, while contributing meaningfully to international frameworks such as the prevention of arms race in outer space (PAROS) and long-term sustainability guidelines, as well as the Action Tune on Lunar Activities consultation, the ATLAC, which Pakistan is co-chairing under COPUOS. In contrast, space development by India often carries a military intent, an example being the 2019 anti-satellite system test, which generated significant orbital debris. Such developments pose both safety and security risks, in addition to challenges to strategic stability in South Asia. This matter begs more study and scrutiny by the international community. The book lays the foundation for further analyses in this field. The weaponization of space, the integration of satellite capabilities into conventional warfare, as seen in Ukraine, and the increasing entanglement of the private sector in geopolitics all underscore the urgent need for legally binding norms. Starlink's SpaceX, for example, has been leveraged for military communication by one side in an active military conflict, blurring the lines between civilian and military assets. Pakistan has constructively engaged in the discourse at the UN COPUOS in Vienna, the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva, and the First Committee in New York for the prevention of militarization and weaponization of outer space and fostering international cooperation for the peaceful uses of outer space. In this regard, initiatives like the Action Team on Lunar Activities Consultations, the ATLAC, which Pakistan co-chairs, ensures that new governance platforms reflect diverse perspectives, not just those of technologically dominant countries. In conclusion, I would like to state that the book rightly emphasizes the need for a comprehensive and equitable space governance framework, one that integrates legal, security, and development dimensions. It speaks to the aspirations of nations like Pakistan, who, despite resource constraints, are committed to space as a domain of peace, not power projection. I would once again like to extend my congratulations to the authors and publishers for this important work. I hope that this book will serve not only as a scholarly resource but as a strategic reminder that peace in space begins with responsibility on Earth. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to hear from co-author of the book, Sabre Rattling in Space, A South Asian Perspective, Dr. Ahmad Khan. Dr. Ahmad Khan completed his PhD in Strategic and Nuclear Studies at the Department of Strategic Studies, National Defense University, Islamabad. He is a graduate of Center for High Energy Physics from University of Punjab, Lahore. He worked at Beacon House School System, Roots Schools, Institute of Strategic Studies, Institute for Strategic Studies Research and Analysis NDU, Pakistan Institute for Peace Studies, and Strategic Vision Institute. He was visiting fellow at South Asia Center, Atlantic Council, United States, and the Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. He is also a visiting faculty member at the National Defense University and Air University in Islamabad. He has co-authored several international publications in impact factor journals on space, nuclear, and emerging technologies. He has contributed two book chapters in the Handbook of Space Security, published by Springer, sponsored by the European Space Agency. The floor is yours, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Chairman Sparko, Honorable Executive Director Dr. Naim Salik, and Honorable Mr. Khalid Banuri and Professor Zafar, Jaspal, and Honorable guests, respected colleagues, esteemed member of the academic community, and member of the press, and my friend, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning to all of you. It is an honor and humbling privilege to stand before you on the official launch of our book, Sabre Rattling in Space, A South Asian Perspective, co-authored with my colleague, Dr. Aligar Sadeh. Ladies and gentlemen, today is not merely a celebration of a publication. It is a culmination of years of academic pursuit, analysis, and passion to contribute meaningfully to one of the most pressing security discourse of our time, space security. At the outset, allow me to extend my deepest gratitude to every one of you for being part of this milestone. Most importantly, I wish to thank my family, my wife, my son, whose love and understanding have my greatest support. I dedicate this work to my late father and my mother, who is a cancer survivor. Thanks to Allah for taking the disease away from her, but unfortunately, she is living with one arm and other arm has suffered severely due to sequelae of radiotherapy. I owe an immense debt of gratitude to my mentor, Professor Dr. Zulfikar Khan, who is unfortunately not here, but I convey my regards to him and sincere thanks to Dr. Aligar Sadeh. Working along with these two gentlemen of stature has been both an education and inspiration. I'm also thankful to Springer Nature for believing in this project and bringing it to a global readership and the community of space policy and strategic studies experts. I am also thankful to Sir Banuri for suggesting the title of the book once I met him in 2020. I signed the agreement in 2020, but it took 4 years of long time to resubmit the manuscript. And I was waiting for the change and finally able to submit the manuscript after 5 years of contract. I'm also grateful to Brigadier Zahar Kazmi, who is not here, for providing me with the support. Last but not the least, I'm also thankful to Major General Sahab Shahid for his encouragement in writing and completing the project. Distinguished guests, the central argument of the book is that states have followed a path from space militarization to weaponization. That is the central theme. But unfortunately, there are some argument that state has not followed that path. But I argue that that path has been followed and weaponization is about to happen. The book has noted that the United States, India, China has invested significant resources into exploring, exploiting, and utilizing space. However, without a nuanced understanding of state behavior and capabilities, it is naive to chart their progression towards space weaponization solely based on declared policies or over demonstration. No state has officially acknowledged deploying space weapons. Nevertheless, specific patterns of behavior among space-faring nations strongly indicate that space in practice has weaponized. Distinguished Executive Director, SVI and Chairman Sparko, one of my favorite chapter and I thoroughly enjoyed writing was the chapter on examining different schools of thought on space security. Here we have noticed four distinct frameworks for interpreting state behaviors: space nationalism, technological determinism, global institutionalism, and social interactionism. These are four theoretical baseline to understand the behavior of the states, not the capabilities. These perspectives shed light on the motivations and strategic consideration that shape national policies in outer space. We have argued that the major powers frame their strategic thinking around doctrines such as sanctuary doctrine, survivability doctrine, high ground doctrine, and space control doctrine. And it was a difficult part for me to map the behavior and capabilities on all these four, or I may say, 8 school of thoughts. Based on these theoretical framework presented, the book concludes that space weapon will likely remain in existence without being disarmed, and state will continue to possess such capabilities. However, no major power is likely to admit to deploying weapons in space as this would compel other states to follow the same suit, triggering a destabilizing arms race in outer space. As a result, what I perceive or I conclude from the book, the survivability doctrine will prevail over the rest of the doctrine, that the space weapon will there, but it not will be deployed because of the fear that the same path will be followed by the other states. As a result, the survivability doctrine is expected to prevail over the other doctrine, with space weapon primarily serving as tool of assured space deterrence. Nevertheless, the book warns that in the event of armed conflict, such deterrence would quickly erode if space weapons are actively used. Distinguished guests, the book provides a detailed assessment of space doctrine of US, China, India, and Pakistan. The space doctrine, the US space doctrine, the foundation of US space doctrine is the 5 Ds: deception, disruption, denial, degradation, and destruction. And most importantly, the space doctrine of US is based on the freedom of action and deny the space for others. China's space doctrine remain unpublished, but their white papers emphasize rapid technological advancement. The book suggests that the future rivalry between US and China could emerge due to mutual suspicion, misinterpretation, and misrepresentation. India, in contrast, has overtly demonstrated its willingness to weaponize space, conducting an anti-satellite test in 2029. In Joint Doctrine of Armed Forces 2017 and Land Warfare Doctrine 2018, India has identified that space is the future medium of warfare. On the other hand, Pakistan has never exhibited the intent or demonstrated the capabilities indicative of space weaponization. In 2020, its 2023 National Space Policy advocates the peaceful usage of outer space while also recognizing its role in the national security. Distinguished Executive Director SBI and Chairman Sparko, the book gives particular attention to India's inter-exchangeability of space and missile technologies. The book states that India's long-range ballistic missiles program is rooted in the technology of its space launch vehicle programs. The dual trajectory has been facilitated through international cooperation from US, former Soviet Union, Germany, France, and Israel. The book traces how India's anti-satellite missile was developed from its BMD and ICBM programs. It was a difficult part to prove these two assertions, but I able to mention some of the resources that prove that hypothesis. Distinguished guests, the book note that, and that was also a part which I love to talk about because it highlights our negative parts or maybe our journey or odyssey to space journey. The book note that NASA was once collaborated closely with Pakistan in 1960s. Sparko during the Cold War. However, US has placed Sparko on the entity list, imposing sanction and restriction its access to the American technology. The US, as far as the treaty is concerned, the US and its allies advocate a responsible behavior in space approach to be adopted by major spacefaring nations. This primarily means norms, practice, principles, and guidelines independent of a legally binding instruments suitable to prevent an arms race in outer space. On the other hand, China and Russia stress the need for a legally binding instrument on the Paris issue. These two approaches collide and a singularity has not been reached so far. Distinguished guest, the book concludes that a universally accepted arms control and disarmament treaty in space should be negotiated to prevent space from being a site of military conflicts. Our main emphasis in the book is that stalemate must end on Paros through norm building or either by adopting a legally binding instruments. These are the final points are unsolicited, but I want to highlight, taking advantage of this esteemed gathering, I would like to highlight some of the challenges I have faced while writing the book. I contacted Springer in 2020, and the agreement was signed in 2020. And the reply received from Noorpur Singh as series editor. After completing the project, I submitted the book for proofreading and emailed to Vijay Kumar, and Praveen Kumar did the final editing and publishing. It is astonishing to see how many Indians are there in the publishing sector. And Sir Jaspal and Sir Naim Salik usually told me that either publish or perish. But it is noticeable that whenever you write a narrative on India or a Western power, there are chances that you will perish without publishing. Fortunately, I was lucky that the criticism of India got published. I I took the advantage of editing and finally insert some of the narrative which I would love to insert in the book, able to recognize the loopholes in the publishing sector, but if I put it there in the earlier draft, this book would would not have been published. Likewise, I also face critical views from the American reviewers. They consider that space has not been weaponized and it is all hoax. Based on their views on the technical aspect of placing weapon in orbits. But I have recently revisited some of their writing and now they are defending the development of Golden Dome announced by President Trump, as it has opened the doors to the space weaponization. Distinguished Executive Director, Chairman Sparko, and esteemed reviewers and guests, I am once again thankful to SVI for arranging this book launch and providing me an opportunity to highlight the looming challenge to the space security. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with the very pertinent issues regarding developments in outer space, particularly from a South Asian perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in welcoming the keynote speaker, Chairman, Space in Upper Atmosphere Research Commission, Mr. Muhammad Yusuf Khan, for keynote address. Muhammad Yusuf Khan, pride of performance, holds degrees in Bachelor's of Engineering in Electronics and MPhil in Space Science. He joined Pakistan Space and Upper Atmosphere Research Commission, SPARCO, in 1993. He brings more than 3 decades of extensive space industry experience, having held senior leadership roles such as Member Space Electronics, Director General Geosatellite Center, and Deputy Director General of Satellite Manufacturing at SPARCO before his current appointment. He has authored several research papers in the field of space science and technology. He is a seasoned professional with expertise in technical, administrative, and financial management of mega projects in the field of satellite technology. In recognition of his notable achievements in the field of science, particularly the contributions toward the realization of National Space Program, he has been conferred with Presidential Pride of Performance, an award by the Government of Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Currently, Mr. Muhammad Yusuf Khan is serving as the chairman of Pakistan's National Space Agency, SPARCO, and also as the president of the Islamic Network on Space Science and Technology. Sir, the floor is yours. Please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. respected Director SVI, Dr. Naim Salik Sahab, Honorable Ambassador, although he was on video, Muhammad Kamran, we know him, he's mashallah performing very well in Vienna. Uh, Mr. Khalid Banuri Sahab, Dr. Zafar Nawaz Sahab, DG Agda, distinguished excellencies, and esteemed colleagues, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. It is a profound honor to be here on the launch of a timely and intellectually incisive work, Sabre Rattling in Space, a South Asian Perspective, authored by Dr. Ahmad Khan and Dr. Aligar Sadeh. I extend my heartfelt congratulations to the authors for their important scholarly contributions to the global discourse on the evolving contours of space geopolitics and militarization. The book explores the rising instability in the space domains, once seen mainly as a field of exploration, cooperation, and scientific progress, but now increasingly affected by strategic competition and growing tensions. The work done by the authors probes the fault lines between technological advancement and space geopolitics, raising essential questions that are not only academic but also strategic. The distinguished speakers before me have already offered thoughtful insight and valuable perspective on this publication. So, keeping my remarks brief, I would take the opportunity to offer a few broader thoughts on the key themes of the book and their relevance in today's rapidly evolving global space landscape. Ladies and gentlemen, in recent years, the global space sector has witnessed a paradigm shift from the deterministic logic of exploration and discovery to the more complex domain of contestation and dominance. This shift is reflected in the exponential rise of military satellite programs, dual use satellite technology, and space doctrines that redefine the strategic calculus of modern nations. At the core of this transformation are most prominently the next generation military satellites. With global advancement in reprogrammable payloads and satellite autonomy, these satellite systems are not only more resilient but also far more agile in adapting to real-time battlefield needs. They have expanded the scope of space-based ISR, have enhanced capability in intelligence gathering and communications, significantly impacting modern strategic planning. Furthermore, artificial intelligence, coupled with the dynamic software satellites, are ushering in a new epoch of programmable space assets. These technologies, led by advanced nations, signal the growing role of software-defined and AI-augmented space assets. Ladies and gentlemen, the challenges to space safety and security have never been more pronounced. The growing density of satellites, aggressive roles of private actors, and the persistence of unregulated debris have made space traffic management and space situational awareness two essential pillars of sustainable space operations. Space debris alone now constitute over 34,000 traceable objects, each with the potential to trigger a cascading Kessler syndrome effect, chain reaction of space collisions. A single, a single irresponsible action or a failure of coordination can endanger the entire low Earth orbit infrastructure on which depends the civilian, commercial, and military services across the globe. In this context, space governance emerges not as a theoretical construct, but as an existential necessity. Multilateral frameworks such as United Nations legally binding outer space treaties, non-binding resolutions, and guidelines such as guidelines on long-term sustainability, space debris mitigation, space traffic management, and orbital safety must evolve to keep pace with the realities of hybrid threats, dual use ambiguity, and technological asymmetries. Ladies and gentlemen, from the perspective of Pakistan, a developing spacefaring nation, I must underscore the urgency of ensuring that access to outer space remains equitable, peaceful, and rules based. Space should not become the next theater of confrontation, especially in geopolitically sensitive regions like South Asia, where historical tensions and territorial disputes already strain strategic stability. Pakistan has long supported and continue to advocate for the non-weaponization and equitable use of space at UN fora, and always propagated that the principle of non-weaponization of outer space must be upheld consistently to ensure space remains a domain of peace. Moreover, Pakistan actively participates in global discussions on responsible space behavior, including at the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space and the Open-Ended Working Group on Space Threats. We support the development of international norms and believe that developing nations must have a voice in shaping them. In December 2023, as Dr. Ahmad Khan mentioned, that the government of Pakistan approved Pakistan's first ever national space policy, outlining a strategic vision to harness space technology for socio-economic development and international cooperation. In early 2024, the Pakistan Space Activity Rules were promulgated, establishing the legal foundation for regulating space activity and enabling establishment of Pakistan Space Activity Regulatory Board. Together, these policies mirror the reflect Pakistan's commitment to responsible and constructive engagement in the global space domain. Sustainable space development and regional stability. These initiatives ensure Pakistan's alignment with the international obligation and best practices. But regulation alone is not enough. Building capabilities for the resilience is also important. Capabilities that foster indigenous research in satellite autonomy, secured communication, and AI driven SSA platforms. Similarly, public private partnership, academia industry linkage, and international collaboration in emerging technology must be the foundation stones of a future ready space ecosystem in the country. Pakistan, as a nation strategically situated at the crossroad of South Asia, is presented with both unique opportunity and challenges, and to harness the benefits of space we must continue to enhance our technological capabilities, space security, and build stronger diplomatic ties. Ladies and gentlemen, for developing nations, the main challenge lays not only in gaining access to space, but in maintaining a long term and sustainable presence. Unlike advanced spacefaring nations, the developing nations lack the resources to deploy redundant satellite systems or invest in advanced technologies. These constraints are primarily attributed to limited fiscal allocations, underdeveloped indigenous R&D ecosystem, and evolving space infrastructure in developing nations. In this context, what is needed is not an arms race in orbit, but a cooperation based approach that prioritizes capacity building, shared services, and collaborative missions. I would reiterate the regional constellations, shared data system, and inclusive space situational mechanism through multilateral cooperation can offer viable non-militarized pathways to protect space assets. The emphasis, therefore, must remain on building resilience through cooperation, not on deterrence through weaponization. Ladies and gentlemen, as we look ahead, the interplay of technology, security, policy, and diplomacy will define our trajectory in space. The doctrines we make today, whether in deploying dual use systems, devising national space policy and rules, or forging bilateral agreements, all such decisions will resonate for generations. Coming to this book is a timely wake up call. It urges us to reflect, but more importantly, to respond wisely, collectively, and ethically. Space is a shared global resource, and its peaceful use must remain a collective responsibility. To that end, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to reiterate Pakistan's commitment to advancing responsible space behavior, contributing to the regional and global norms, and ensuring that our ascent into the space remains a beacon of peace, not provocation. While the echoes of strategic rivalry grow louder, we must not lose sight of the quiet promise space holds for peace, for cooperation, and for the benefit of all humankind. In conclusion, I once again congratulate the authors for this bold and necessary work. May it ignite the critical conversation we so urgently need. And may this gathering be a testament to our shared resolve to make space a domain of peace, progress, and planetary solidarity. Amin. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. As we now move towards the conclusion of today's ceremony, I would like to request the author, our chief guest, and the esteemed reviewers to kindly join us on stage for a group photograph. The remaining participants are requested to proceed outside for tea. It has been an honor to host this distinguished gathering. Thank you so much.